Howdy, y'all. Good morning and happy Labor Day. I hope you're enjoying your last little bit of summer vacation. Just want to take this time in this video. It's going to be a little bit longer, but hey, you've got the day off. To kind of give you an outline for not just the book of Philippians, but also for our purpose in doing these videos. At C3, we very strongly believe in the importance of the study of Scripture, and especially for you guys as teenagers and young adults, so that you can live a life that is honoring to the Lord. I'm going to take some verses here out of 2 Timothy. Chapter 3, verse 16 says, "All Scripture is breathed out by God and profitable for teaching, for reproof, for correction, and for training in righteousness, that the man of God may be competent, equipped for every good work." And then along the same lines, an old Awana verse, 2 Timothy 2:15, says, "Do your best to present yourself to God as one approved, a worker who has no need to be ashamed, rightly handling the word of truth." As we go through this, we're going to be really sharing this experience together. We're going to be going verse by verse most of the time, maybe a couple verses at a time, or maybe a full block. It really depends on how I'm studying through it, and if there's areas that you guys want to go back to, just go ahead and leave a comment underneath it on the Facebook page that you're obviously viewing it on right now. Any questions that you want to post, I ask that students are the ones to post them. If parents or adults, and by adults I mean you're out of the home and out of college, or an adult, you know who you are. If you have those, post those to me personally. That way I can field them in greater depth and kind of stick on task with the students and our study, and not get bogged down that way. Questions that you have, I'm open to all of them. I will search for advice from elders or other pastors like Brand or Steve at church, because this is really going to be something for us to grow together and learn together. A basic outline for the book of Philippians, which is the book that won on the little voting contest on the C3 Gen page. It's actually a very simple book. It's a very commonly read book, and it's a book that tells us a lot about what Christ was like as a man. It's actually one of the few areas outside of the Gospels that tell what Christ was like as a man. The author actually has more than one. Of course, God is the ultimate author of Scripture, but Paul and Timothy worked together to write this. You can see this in the very first verse. It says Paul and Timothy. Now, more than likely Timothy, because he was Paul's kind of understudy, more than likely he was the one who actually wrote it, though it was Paul's words as well, as he got them from the Lord. It was co-authored, but still inspired by God. It was probably written around 61 AD. This is when Paul was in prison, his first time in prison in Rome. He was under house arrest. He was arrested for basically preaching the word. He would be in prison again a second time. The second time he was in a dungeon. His health got very, very bad. But this time he was kind of locked in a house, not without a collar around his ankle, but actually with armed guards there. And it was in this time that he wrote the epistles. That would be Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians would be the 4 epistles that he wrote under house arrest. And these would just be letters. The word epistle means letter. Letters that he sent out to those churches. He wrote this one to the church in Philippi, which is a city about 6 miles from the sea in the northeast corner of Greece, modern-day Greece. At the time, it was called Macedonia. He planted the church there during his second missionary journey in about AD 51, so 10 years before this was written. The account of this happening is in Acts 16, which actually Brand spoke about today in church, though by the time you see this, it'll be tomorrow, or yesterday, that he mentioned it in church, where the possessed girl was following around, and then they were arrested and thrown in prison. That jail keeper was the first convert in Philippi, and it was out of him and his family that this church was born. This was the first church that was planted in Europe by Paul. Over the course of the 10 years in between when this was written and when he first planted the church, it grew, remained in touch with Paul, even though he hadn't been there for quite a while. In fact, according to chapter 4, verse 16, the church gave him support financially on at least 2 different occasions. This book is actually a thank you letter and was sent back to them in the hands of a guy named Epaphroditus, which is a long name, which basically means lovely. Like, his name literally means lovely, which is, I guess, lovely, but that'd be awkward if that's what your name meant. Anyway, that was a complete side note. Epaphroditus had been sent to them to give them a gift from the church of Philippi, but it had become very, very sick and had been there too long, or been there longer than expected. So Paul sent a letter back with them as a thank you, but also to encourage them. The very theme of the book is having joy during rough times, and it uses Christ as our primary example. And then Paul shares his thoughts as well from his personal life. It teaches us to place our focus on Christ, his life, his work, and his sacrifice, and his joy through it all. I hope that as we study through this, you gain some joy and some perspective. I know this book has been very convicting for me, the times that I have read it. I'm really looking forward to it. If you want to invite your friends to watch this or share this with your friends so that they can see it on their Facebook, I know our C3 Gen group is a closed group, so they can't just look it up. Go ahead and give them my info or one of us admins on there, which would be any one of the pastoral staff or any of us youth leaders, and we'll get them let in, or you can just give them the link to the YouTube page. Have a good day, y'all.